who am I without a title? Who am I without this job? Did it spark that for you?
100%. I had this exercise. One of my very first challenges was, how am I going to introduce myself at a dinner party? Like I, for so long, was shaking someone's hand and saying, I'm a partner at McKinsey, and then I'm the CEO of Oroton. It becomes your identity in a really deep way. And then when that's stripped away, which is just really a role at work, I was like, what do I say? Do I just say, hi, I'm Jenny? Are people going to like me? I have to take it back to the reason I took the break, which was a personal reason. And my mom passing away was this turning point for me. It was very sudden. I think I went through some pretty dark places to get where I am. When you work with a coach or a therapist, I remember my very first session, she said something to the effect of, I know it's probably too early to say this, but I think this is your phoenix rising from the ashes moment. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I just feel desperately sad. And I feel like I'm under a rock and I don't want to talk to people and I don't want to engage. And there's so many more layers that if you take the time to go through them, I think you become a much more evolved person. And it's a strange, almost super cheesy thing to say, but I feel like I have a calmness and a clarity that I never had before. My big fucking dream is
big fucking dreams. All right then, you got this.
Hey, big fucking dreamers. So pumped to be here with you today. And I'm extremely excited to welcome a guest to my podcast. Jenny Child is the former CEO of Oroton, one of Australia's oldest luxury brands. She's been featured in Forbes, the Australian Financial Review, the Australian. She's got an MBA from Duke. She spent 15 years at McKinsey and made partner along the way. And the most impressive thing is that she can also sing the entire McDonald's menu, which we'll be sure to see later in the episode. Jenny Child, I'm so happy to have you here today. Please welcome to the Big Fucking Dreams podcast.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So you are going through a bit of a transition period in your life and in your career, and I'm wondering if you could just tell us a bit more about that.
It's the first time in my life I've taken time off as an adult from working, which has been a really big shift. Actually, my husband said to me this week, he said, I think we've had some good time with you. I think, we're all ready for, you to get back out there, because I have invested all my time and energy into my family, really, and into myself over the past several months. It's been a great time to reflect and stop the action and the frenetic pace of life and actually just make sure that the way I'm spending my time and energy is in the direction that I want it to be, because life is short.
Yeah. And I remember I took about a year and a half out when I was a lady of leisure and from the corporate world, but it also kind of sparked a lot of identity shifts and a lot of questioning and like, who am I? Who am I without a title? Who am I without this job? I'm wondering, did it spark that for you?
100%. I had this exercise. One of my very first challenges was, how am I going to introduce myself at a dinner party? Like I, for so long, was shaking someone's hand and shortly into the conversation saying, I'm a partner at McKinsey or I'm an AP at McKinsey, whatever level I was for a long time. And then I'm the CEO of Oroton. It becomes your identity in a really deep way. And then when that's stripped away, which is just really a role at work, I was like, what do I say? Do I just say, hi, I'm Jenny? Are people going to like me? Am I going to have anything that they want to engage on? And that was the first challenge. But of course, I was fine. After the first dinner party, I realized actually, people are engaging with me anyway. They could actually, in some cases, not care about what I'm doing at all.
Yeah, the dinner party shame. Because it's almost like the veneer of like, well, this is where I belong and this is where you can categorize me. And if I don't have that, then I think in a certain sect of people that are also quite high achieving and ambitious, and depending on who you go to dinner parties with as well.
Yeah. You think it's how you're valued. And it's also this exercise of like, is that because that's how I value people? And is that really sensible? And, is that deep enough to really get to know people? So I think in some ways it's been such a inward exercise as much as it's been an outward one.
Yeah. What has the inward exercise been? Like, what have you kind of learned along that?
Well, I think I have to take it back to the reason I took the break, which was a personal reason. And my mom passing away was this turning point for me. It was very sudden. I had no time to prepare. I know, which is a funny thing to say because you grow up your whole life knowing your parents are probably going to die before you do. But then the way that it happened and when it happened was a real shock. So the exercise, the inner exercise for me has been very rich with therapy. I have an amazing therapist. She's been fabulous because she sits at the intersection of working with a lot of executives, high performing people, but also with a deep experience around grief and transitions and loss. And that has been a year-long course for myself that has triggered a lot of really deep work about the loss of my mom, grieving that, but then also taking this time to say, okay, well, what am I about in this world? And if what happened to mom made me face my own mortality, then let's use that in a positive way to make sure that I'm using my next era of life in the right way.
Yeah. Like the concept of memento mori, I know we talked about, and how kind of contemplating on death can really bring a reflection point to like, what is it that I want to do? Who is it that I want to be? What conclusions did you draw about yourself and what you want?
Well, one big difference in this period of my life and what I've gone through the last year has been the presence of the thought is much more of a daily thing than it's time to reflect and remember life is short, and those moments where you might listen to a podcast and reflect and then think about it again 3 months later. I think for me the big change now is it's with me, and it's a strange, almost super cheesy thing to say, but I feel like I have a calmness and a clarity that I never had before. I will walk into a room and I think like, oh gosh, I have this big insight about what really matters for me and what I'm about in a way that it's just so much more present. And it is connected to it's about the now. It's about enjoying the experiences that we have. This moment that you and I have isn't probably going to happen again in the same way ever again. And so how lucky that you invited me to be here and that I get to have this experience and end my week with something that feels meaningful. And so being able to just have that be ever present, which, I've talked about Sam Harris and how he's influenced me, and the paradox of death, which is one of his little snippets. And, instead of that occasional reminder, it's the consistency.
Yeah. I'm wondering on if with the passing of your mother, it made you reflect on the life choices that you made and what brought you, because I know that your parent, like you were told from 2 years old that you were going to be a doctor. And that was, that was like the trajectory that you were going on. And then you changed paths when you were at university. But I'm wondering if it's changed how you view things and how you view your career and even how you view ambition.
I do think that what I mentioned before, that idea of like, where is the drive coming from? And can I embrace what's actually coming from me versus what's coming from other people's expectations? There's been a major shift in that with mom passing. And I do think it's connected to my childhood experiences growing up with her. And unfortunately, my parents separated and mom moved away when I was really young. And what we've uncovered when my therapist and I have talked through this is there was that deep sense of abandonment as a young child from something so primal as your mom and not being close to her on a day-to-day basis that forced me to be independent and, needing to prove that I could be okay on my own 2 feet as a very young person in the world. And also trying to sort of win back that relationship with my mom. Well, she's moved away and maybe it's because of me. And if I can do these things, then I'll gain her love and that closeness again. And this is all subconscious thought, right? Because as a young person, you don't know that's what's driving you. But I do think there was a lot of that embedded in my journey in life. I had this like relentless drive. I mean, I could stay up and study till 2 a.m. when I was in high school, not because anybody else asked me to, but because I was sort of trying to prove something. And I do think a lot of that is organic to my personality, but there was this extra part of it that once mom died was gone immediately. And so we've spent a lot of time investigating, how does that change me? You know, am I going to have the same level of drive and ambition now that that layer is not there anymore? Like, who am I really, and what is right for me? So investigating that has been really interesting.
I'm so interested in the release that you felt when she died. What do you think that was?
All I can say is grief, but the term grief is just like this really sort of permanent thing. Like, it's just a change in your life when someone who's close to you is no longer there. And it is immediate in terms of how it hits you and the permanence of it, I guess. Not the permanence of the sadness. I think that's the difference. You know, there's some things about grief that feel really significant and sort of grab you and grip you and release over time. But the change of whatever my mom and I's relationship was, all of the things that I wanted it to be, all of my hopes for the future, all of the expectations I thought she had of me, those were the things that ended because it no longer is relevant anymore. And you do grieve the loss of that too, right? Because some of the redemption of maybe our relationship could be this if we have some more time to work on it together. You got to put that down. It's not a factor anymore.
Yeah. It sounds like almost like both like very positive in a way, though, like even though it's enveloped in grief, the expectations almost release so that you could find, and tell me if I'm wrong here.
No, you're right.
No,
you're
session.
right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. It sounds very positive probably now. I think I went through some pretty dark places to get where I am. And the interesting thing when you work with a coach or a therapist who has pattern recognition and can see the big picture likely before you can. I remember my very first session with Linda was about, she said something to the effect of, I know it's probably too early to say this, but I think this is your phoenix rising from the ashes moment. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I just feel desperately sad. And I feel like I'm under a rock and I don't want to talk to people and I don't want to engage. And so that comment, I think now coming true, is that positivity that you're sensing, because I've been able to make sense of the complexity of grief and sort of unbundle it and say, yeah, sure, there's that just like sadness that will always be that I miss mom. But it's so much deeper than that. There's so many more layers that if you take the time to go through them, I think you become a much more evolved person. It can really be a positive thing.
Yeah, because even like what you were saying, it's almost like there's, a lot of energy that also goes into trying to rebuild a relationship that has been fractured in a way. Those relationships, like they can become new, but it's almost, like kintsugi. I think that's the word of like the Japanese, like something's broken, but then it's like stitched together back with gold. But it's still in a way, like you're still almost repairing it. So what I'm hearing is like the freeing up of energy as well of
Absolutely.
like, there's so much energy that goes into like trying to rebuild this thing.
It's a really good way to phrase it. I haven't really thought about it in terms of energy in that way, but you're right. The concept is it no longer has to be something that in the back of my mind is this constant ongoing dialogue of, am I spending enough time with mom? Do I need to have that conversation again? Didn't go very well last time, all those things that do take energy. And energy is finite. Time and energy are finite, as we know. So now repurposing that is the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah. Where does it get to go? I'm so curious about even what you said earlier, kind of like the nature versus nurture, because we've spoken about, I've got a theory about the origins of toxic high performance, and it's sometimes high performance that can come at the cost of your health and well-being. And it could be being bullied at a young age, being abandoned by parents, whether that's a parent leaving, divorce, alcoholism. I see this with clients that have been adopted as well. They usually have that really high family expectations or like ultra intense academic expectations about what you can achieve. And it's interesting because I think that, especially me coming from an addiction background as well and being sober for a lot of years and seeing the different paths that these, whether big traumas or small traumas can take. And I work in the high performance space, but I'm also in 12-step meetings all the time. And it's this kind of like interesting juxtaposition of you could go either way. And I've seen people go either way. I've seen people go into like massive addiction and destroy their lives, or I've seen people go into extremely high performance and become partners at McKinsey and become CEOs. And there's almost like this intersection. But I'm interested in what you said about how maybe I was always this way. Like maybe I was always going to study until 10 p.m., but then I'm now studying until 2 a.m. Like how it's driven and shaped your ambition.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to what I would have organically, naturally done versus how much my experiences played into the person that I am today. But I am very lucky, to your point around the different tracks you could take. I was never interested in drinking and doing things that took me down a path of dealing with or finding a way to not have to engage in the hurt of things that I experienced. I found what were externally in our world and the social norms that we live in very productive ways to use that energy to, on paper, allow me to succeed. And my therapist and I talk about that a lot. How lucky was I that I was actually born with a really good brain. And that's pure luck, right? My ability to know that my brain is my asset, which is something that I also got turned on to when I was young. I got picked when I was in second grade, and I remember all of it, to be part of this cross-schooling district program. One day a week from third grade to sixth grade, I was bused with 8 other kids across, 4 or 5 school districts. And we had this program that was specially designed for us to learn all kinds of things about the world. And there was some acknowledgement in that was like, hey, you're smart. And that was an unlock for me. And because it happened so early, I just really grabbed onto it, and it became my path. It took me down that second path that you described, luckily.
Yeah.
Though sometimes, there are things that are like working to help guide you in the right direction that you have to be able to acknowledge. And yeah, I feel both lucky that I took that path and I had those constructs that came my way, but also, proud that I put in the hard work and I used my tools constructively until, they weren't probably that constructive. I think there does come a point where you're like, actually work myself into a tizzy for what?
Mm-hmm.
I went past the point of it being effective and productive. And that's the stuff that you want to be able to rectify in your next chapter.
Yeah, what's the tipping point of, and it's so interesting because like at a young age, the identity of you're gifted, you're talented, you get to be in this program. I know my husband was like, he was in a selective school in Australia as well. And the identity that forms. And I have had friends that were in gifted and talented programs, but then they kind of thought, that means I don't have to work hard though. Like, because I'm just naturally gifted, but then the hard work doesn't really kick in. And then it's almost like a disservice versus what I'm hearing from you is like, okay, I'm selected for this program. And then I realize in that is something that I can grab onto. And that has taken you to objectively extreme success.
I think that's where the adversity comes in. I remember we had a conversation around that. The adversity of things that were happening with my mom. But also I grew up in a really simple household. It wasn't everything on a gold platter. So there was something that for me was, if I'm going to have a better life for myself, I'm going to have to make it. I'm going to have to put the hard work in. So I do think the combination of the realization that I have these tools with the adversity is actually the real kind of equation that paved my path and helped me push myself and put the hard work in, like you said.
Yeah. Well, given like you're at this point of really big transition, I mean, even your husband's like, it's time to.
We've had enough of you. Like, what?
Yeah, it's funny. You're in this transition, and I'm wondering how you're feeling about the next chapter. But also, it sounds like there's not only a next career chapter, but also a next identity chapter of who you want to be and the shift and change about how you want to move forward. And I'm just curious how you're thinking about all that.
When you have some time to reflect, you start to remember things that people said to you that you can kind of grab on and understand in a new way. And so there's a few comments that I've reflected on from people that I really admire. And one's my husband, who said, "Oh my God, Jenny, you're so close to being great. You're so close." Oh, but in a loving way, right? Like you are like, you've got this like amazing skill set, but there's just something holding you back, and I can't put my finger on it for you, but there's just something. And as I think now about the next chapter and kind of where I am, I can really understand that. I do think it has to do with that sort of the calmness, I'm doing this for myself. I don't have to be a frenetic, crazy idiot as I approach, blindlessly going for like winning, just more thoughtful in what it is I'm trying to achieve for an organization that I might be running or for myself. I think that almost maturity, if we call it that, or that evolution of this next chapter of me as a leader, as a professional, is going to frame whatever I do. And so I'm really excited about that. And I also feel my energy's back. Like I went through that really dark period where I was just ground zero. Like I had nothing to give, really. And my family, I really wanted to reconnect with them. And so any energy I had, I was sort of pushing it that way. And, that slowly started to change. And now I feel more than 100% ready to go with that energy to invest in something. I think the combination of, some of that wisdom of what I've discovered about myself and being able to use that inner drive about what I want to be, the type of way I want to show up, a little bit more of the calmness to be able to think through it in the moment instead of just running with the energy is going to mean something great. I don't know what it is yet. Exploring some really fun and interesting stuff. One other thing I wanted to mention is just the aperture of what I'm looking at, I find has changed. I was in this I know you know it because the background from tech and the role that you had, very corporate. That's kind of all I knew, like this path. I find myself exploring more risky, adventurous kind of build ideas that I wouldn't have given myself permission to explore in the past. So I don't know exactly where I'll land, but I do know this subset is bigger.
Okay, I feel like I have like 50 questions. So I'm like, where do I take this? Okay, I have something that I want to come back to, but you've mentioned quite a few times this like frenetic energy. And I know that so many people can just relate to that, especially like in these roles of just like a million fucking things just like coming at you at once. And then there's also like the internal drive of just like wanting to be the best and wanting to win and wanting to prove. And can you just talk to me a little bit more about that frenetic energy, but then also how because it seems like you've come to a place in it where it's like processed and seems calmer and seems to relax. So I'm wondering about what that journey was for you.
I wonder if I've fully explored it myself. I mean, I'll just talk out loud about my observation about the frenetic energy that I brought to everything I did, really, in that there were a lot of people around me who I respected and liked that were, they just couldn't keep up. And they were watching me like, what is going on with you? And like, to what end? Kind of the question was like, to what end? Like, where are we going here? Like, sure, we can be better and we want to have a growth mindset. And yes, all those things. But like, why that little bit extra hours into the night or, work that needs to be done at this pace? Why?
And this is people at McKinsey telling you this, or is this?
Less other colleagues at McKinsey, because we're pretty wide.
I was like, isn't that the job?
Yeah. You get a little bit clouded not having this clarity because you are surrounded by people who have that insecure overachiever, run. It's probably beyond that, but also clients. There were times that you watch your clients and they're like, but it's great because we pay you a lot of money and the timeline is short. So I get the delivery pace. But there was sometimes when you got a little bit closer to a client, they kind of look at you and be like, this is just weird. Like this is a little bit too much. But outpacing other people is a good observation because you could obviously say, well, everyone else is just fucked up and not as good as I am. Or you can actually use it as a point of reflection and say, okay, if I'm always outstripping what else is going on and other people around me, am I really getting the best out of a group of people? Probably not. Ultimately, the job of a CEO or any leader is to get the best out of the people that they're around, not to do all the work. So, it wasn't probably until my time at Oroton where that observation was really loud and clear. I think back to that point around wisdom, having the time now to say, okay, where exactly is it that we need to get to by when? Do we all agree? Instead of just hitting the ground running and saying, well, I know, just follow me, I'll take you there. You end up doing most of the work yourself. And I've gotten that feedback. I can remember way back at McKinsey as an early project manager in EM, as we called it at the firm. My feedback was the guy that messed up the model in that big strategy study you guys were doing, you just sidelined him. Like you didn't bring him in, show him how to rebuild the model. You just said, okay, you messed it up, now out of the way. And you just sat down and did the work. And so great, the client got the model and it ended up being right. But from a leadership point of view, it's not really how you get stuff done in the most constructive way. So I've gotten that feedback for a really long time. And now I think I can really understand it in a much deeper way. So it doesn't mean the frenetic pace, like that's not going to go away. Like I still think there's that wanting to win and be the best and that part of me that is consistent. But the how, just being more thoughtful about the how is hopefully the big change.
And do you think that the how is what your husband's talking about in that, like, that's the gap?
It's certainly the gap for him.
Yeah.
A little less criticism, a little less frenetic pace around the house, and
doing the dishes really efficiently.
They have my son and my husband, my son's 9, and he just cracks up at dad when dad makes these jokes. They have this thing around the suggestion box. And by 8:05, suggestion box full. Like it's full. We've had enough. We know what we've done wrong and what we need to do differently by 8:05. So he thinks that's very funny. It's obviously true. Yeah.
As you enter into this next phase and you're talking about, okay, like the calmness and almost like, what is the identity that you're like becoming? I guess I know this is kind of a broad question. Who do you want to be?
I just want to be the best version of myself. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish that I want to be able to say in any given situation that I'm put into? Having more clarity about how I answer that, not just in terms of financial numbers for a business, but in terms of the type of leader I want to be, the growth that I want to accomplish, the growth that I want to help other people accomplish, just having a more well-rounded and more human way to describe what good looks like in any situation is, I think, a real change. Because I could be pretty myopic, like we're going to do that. And I've done the leadership circle and all the profiles that would say, off the charts task performance orientation, off the charts when it comes to caring for people and taking the time to really wrap your arms around who people are so that they can be part of the journey. That's where my work has historically been. And again, it's just that clarity to like see it, not have someone have to tell you. It's like, oh yeah, I understand that now. I really get that. And so being able to use that in my next chapter. I keep saying chapter. I don't know why I keep saying chapter. Era. Era is better.
Yeah.
Sounds
You
like
and Taylor.
Yeah, exactly.
You can. This is your
steal
next.
for the best.
Which outfit you gonna wear next?
I was thinking about eras for a long time ago. We had a McKinsey framework about eras.
She took that from
Exactly,
you. Yeah.
exactly.
And you should get a percentage of the profit.
Trademark.
Yeah,
It's not mine trademark.
Yeah.
But someone should.
Yeah. And I think that there's this interesting, this like being versus doing as well. I remember because, I'm like very task oriented too. And I remember when I was interviewing to be a leader, like one of the people who was going to be my direct reports, who I had worked with closely. But one time she said to me, sometimes in the morning you walk in and I say hi to you and you just like you don't even acknowledge me. And like for me, I probably didn't hear, I don't obviously ignore someone, but I know what was going on, which I was just like running through my to-do list of like, okay, I gotta do this, and that's kind of feedback that I've been given in my career. You're like a bulldozer, like you're an ice queen. That was a fun comment.
Yeah, that's tough.
And I think it's really easy, especially like when you are high achieving, to be so focused on doing and executing, but then thinking, not really reflecting on, but who do I actually want to be? How do I want people to feel around me?
Yeah.
How do I want to feel even? It's like that's just can be so far removed from the task at hand.
But I also think that gets pushed out of you. I mean, I'm not blaming McKinsey at all for the way I was as a leader in an executive role. But it kind of gets beat out of you to not be emotional, especially as a woman and you're working with all these men. Like, don't think about how you're feeling, for God's sakes. Can we just get on to what needs to get done? We don't have time. And there, at least in the old tutelage, I think the firm has even evolved probably beyond that. But there was either a subconscious track of that going on or a much more explicit one. But I do think the idea that you're too busy to have time to think about how you're feeling or how other people are feeling is a pretty normal thing for people who are in really fast-paced careers and really high-pressure situations. And so it's just being able to overcome that and be like, oh, well, actually, I know better. And that's that whole point about living in the now, coming into this conversation, because it's like, what is that wisdom I'm bringing? It's not even really wisdom. It's just a different state of appreciation for that moment in the morning where someone's trying to engage with you and feel like they have a connection so that they can then be happy and productive at whatever they're trying to get done. Will never happen again in that same exact way. And so being able to appreciate the time that you have to walk into the kitchen in the morning and pour the coffee and have that little chat instead of feeling like it's taking you away from the next thing you have to get done. That's the big shift for me. I just got back from this amazing holiday in Japan, and which was longer than normally I've ever taken. So it was about 3 weeks with the family. And I kept saying, this is the best trip I've ever taken. Like, this is so amazing. And I've been reflecting on it. I'm like, is that because the fundamentals of the trip were different? No. Like, I've stayed at nice hotels before. I've done, nice things at nice restaurants. It was, I think, that mindset shift that I was like, every day I was like, what do we get to do today? It wasn't about the, all right, like, I've got it 2 weeks from now, I've got that call, and am I going to be ready for that? It's like that focus on the future, which is important to a degree, but the consuming focus on the future versus being in the moment, there's so much more happiness and enjoyment if we can do that. And, again, luckily for me, the positive side of everything that happened with Mom is just having more consistency with that mindset.
So it sounds like just real presence as well. And I had a client recently and she went on a really big trip, but she took her work laptop and she was like working on closing this deal. And then found out that because of a new policy, it was like a massive deal, but because of a new policy, she only got a certain amount of credit. And what she came to, like, of course, like there's anger at the company, but what she really came to is this is a reflection of like, what are my values in the moment? Like, I'm here with my husband and she just has a child. I'm here with my husband and my child, and I was closing the deal.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, and that was what she was really upset about. Not that, of course, initially it was this whole thing, but then it's like, no, I was robbed, but I'm also allowing myself to do that. And that's
Yeah.
what I really want to change.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like that's what your recent Japan vacation, like it was like real presence.
Immersive.
Yeah.
Like my whole self. And just that gratitude that you have, you're like, oh my gosh, look how cool. Like, isn't it so great that we get to be here right now together and like walking down this street? Which in the past, I think I would have almost thought is like quite trivial. Like, it's a bit silly. But no, it's so true. And that phrase of, the past lives in your mind and the future lives in your mind too, in a concept. And the only thing that's real in life is literally this minute right now. And so if you can embrace that, and I always knew these concepts, I was like rich with concepts and theory. And I think it's when you transition into a place where you're like, you really feel it and it just becomes part of you from some sort of experience or change that you've had, that's the awesome side. That's the place that I feel like I get to be in now, which is cool. And I won't always be, right? There'll be moments and you'll probably see me and be like, Jenny, you remember what we were talking about? It's constant work.
Yeah. Yeah. But this like transition from just kind of being a consumer to then being like actually feeling the thing. And it's not just like listening to a bunch of self-help podcasts or like Eckhart Tolle or, like It's like, okay, no, I actually can feel the presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Could I have gotten there sooner in my life without some of these things happening? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it took the series of things that happened, in the past year for me to be here. And I'm just happy I'm here now. So not kind of kicking myself for saying, gosh, I'm 47. So like I've wasted a lot of time not being like this. I don't think you can think about it that way.
And you kind of said like even the traditional where you've come from, which has been like quite a, corporate background. And now the area of possibility is just open. And it seems like it's a lot more expansive in terms of what you want to do next. I'm wondering like how it is that you got to that type of thinking versus kind of more linear of like, okay, well, now I go and be a CEO at the next company, which, you may not do, or you may do, but it's like, what has allowed you to shift that thinking?
I think time, I think space to set things down. And I will say, I was really fortunate to be in a situation when things happened for me personally, that I had support around me and some wise people that said, if you don't take some space and deal with the grief and all that comes with it, then you're going to suffer from this. And so I don't think all that work I did with my therapist and, the time to be with my family, none of that obviously would have happened if I would have just kept plugging away, gone on to the next thing after Oroton right away, and just kind of push myself to get back into that frenetic lifestyle. Because let's be honest, when you've got the responsibility, and I think it's the right way to say it, it's responsibility for other people's well-being and for the well-being of a business, you can't carve out that much space to do some of this deep work. So I think the space to think about what's next has also been really fortuitous and great because it's allowed me to then consider my full suite of options instead of saying, okay, well, the obvious one, I don't have time to really scan the market here. The obvious one is just the next CEO role for a private equity firm and da. So that's been really good because you got to meet people. You've got to really take the time to suss out new ideas, put them on paper, get to some experts who know more than you do about a space that you're considering. For me, it's been healthcare, longevity, all the stuff that actually got triggered by mom's death, which it wasn't a stroke that just happened. It was 30 years in the making, if not more. And so once you start to look into that, I think what I've been open to is the commercial idea and the system level change that needs to happen in healthcare and the way that we think about our bodies and wellness and longevity. And with that come, specific things for women's health around perimenopause and menopause. And so, finding experts and really exploring what that could look like to build something in that space has just been something I've gotten a chance to do because I have time. I've taken that time and said, no, I'm interested enough. I light up enough when I talk about it that there's something there that I need to explore.
Well, I remember even when we were talking, we had that pre-talk and you were talking about this idea and even your body language, you were like up, you were bright, you were like, and you even put it like, you're like, I could do this. And like, it was, you put your hand really high and then you're like, or I could just be a CEO again for another retail. I just watched your body collapse and I was like, I don't think you should do that. Like, that doesn't sound right. You're really not excited.
Yeah, you're not selling me on it.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's just organic, that's like
Yeah.
what happens when, you've got the ability to look at the full suite of things. You can do the hierarchy pretty quickly for yourself and your good friends look at you and say, no. Why don't you push towards that? And maybe there's nothing that ends up being there right now and you go here, like you said, but at least you've given yourself the opportunity to explore it because you're so excited.
Yeah. And that's, I think that is the freedom, the time, the space, like all the kind of things have to come together to do that. But it's also like, well, where am I naturally? And like, even for me, I was like, maybe I should just like go back into sales. And my whole body was like crumbling.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I should just like go work at Salesforce. And then I was like, oh my God, I think I would die. I think like,
Yeah.
and I was like, maybe I should launch a podcast. It's like,
Which you're so good at. I have to say, I've been listening and I know you're probably going to cut this piece out of it, but I'm so impressed about the quality of thinking that you're putting out into the world. And I've been a bit voyeuristic and feeling like, we're friends because I've been listening to you so much and the people that you have had on and all the work that you've done for yourself that you're now turning to external audiences and saying, I think this could help you too. I think the impact that you're having and can have if you stay on this journey is massive. And I know it's brave. I 100%, based on what I'm even thinking about, know what you've done is really brave. So kudos.
oh, I'm definitely not cutting that out. I'm going to sound clip that shit. Thank you. And I think that, we should just big each other up right now. But like, it's even like before what we spoke about and even our internal voices and me saying to you, you are objectively so impressive. And anyone who listens to this is just going to want to think like, what does this person go through? And I think that, having like coached people that are, I've got the next guest coming in, she's like one of the top sales performers at this huge global tech company. And people have said to me like, oh, I wish I was like her. And then just knowing the internal voices that we all have and that just like there is such a commonality in all of us where we all have these voices that are like, am I good enough? Do people like me? Do people think I'm smart? Do people think I'm capable? Maybe I think I'm a loser. Maybe I think I'm not great. Like it's just, there's no one that I believe that I've come in contact with that doesn't also struggle with this. So I appreciate you coming here and people saying like, well, maybe I'm not a CEO, but maybe I am dealing with grief. Maybe I am dealing with a career transition. Maybe I don't know how to think about myself, but when do I light up? What do I really like? And you having the vulnerability to come on here and talk about like what is actually real. And I just so appreciate that.
Yeah. I think there's so much about our humanity that's shared that if we talk about it more, I do think it brings everyone along instead of feeling like you see these highlight reels of people's lives. And that's the real thing. It's like, no, actually, what we're talking about is the real stuff. Grief is the real stuff. And one thing I've experienced is other people who have experienced grief connect at a totally different level. It has been so helpful to find that community there around me. It's like, no, you aren't the first person who just suddenly lost a parent, by the way. And some people did during COVID and they couldn't even be with their family. And, there's a lot worse cases. And so, connecting in with people and being able to share what I was going through and realize that there were other people around who could really help me has been a big part of, this last year. And so whatever I can offer forward out of that experience, happy days.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Jenny, one last question, and that is, at this stage of life, what is your next big fucking dream?
Oh, shoot. I should have known you were going to ask that. And I have not prepared at all. My big fucking dream is to have impact at a human level, outside myself, outside the immediate circle that I'm in, inclusive of the immediate circle I'm in. But I definitely want to hold true to, because I've always talked about impact at McKinsey. It's a big word we use, like, are we having impact? But for me, it's much more human driven for this next phase. And maybe it'll be the next one after that. But I'm putting it out there as a North Star. I don't know if I'll be able to spend all my capacity towards that in a way that I really aspire to, because I still have big financial dreams too. And I think sometimes, you've got to be able to trade the marbles in the right way. But I know it's there for me and something I'm pushing towards.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for being here. And also that you're just a big fucking dreamer as well. Like a podcast listener, when you told me that, I was like, oh my God, what have I spoken about? But that just means so much to me too. So yeah, thank you so much. It was such a beautiful conversation. And thank you everyone listening to Big Fucking Dreams.
Big fucking dream.